What is going on, everybody? Kyle Murray from FTN Daily back again with the PrizePicks Prop Show, bringing you some of my favorite PGA prop bets for this week's ZOZO Championship. Obviously, before we get into things here, let's talk a little bit about the start time. It's going to be a Wednesday afternoon, Wednesday evening, kind of depending on where you are, Wednesday night start time rather than the Thursday morning or Thursday afternoon start time. So if you're on the West Coast, East Coast, make sure you're getting those times locked in, those picks locked in a little bit earlier this week than normal, with the tournament being over in Japan this week. I believe on where I am on the East Coast, it's going to be a 7:50 start time, with the first pick in this particular PrizePicks play locking at 8:34 p.m. Eastern time. So want to get that out there right off the bat. Another thing I want to get off right off the bat, if you're a new user over at PrizePicks, head over there, use that code FTN, get yourself a 100% match up to $100. You can make a free $100 just like that. But before we get started with all the picks, let me know who are your favorite picks for this week's PGA tournament. The last 2 weeks we've had fairly clear outright winners, and this week we do also, with Xander Schauffele being the pretty unanimous favorite here in this week's tournament, but it's a little bit more widespread in terms of who I think can actually win this week. Last week we saw Patrick Cantlay sort of choke there on 18, and 2 weeks ago we didn't really see Sam Burns compete much at all. So very curious your guys' thoughts. Do you think Xander kind of runs away with it as the Vegas odds are showing, or do you think we have a little bit more of an underdog winner? But let me know who's your pick to win and who's some of your favorite PrizePicks plays for this week. Let's get into my 3 picks for the week. Let's start with the birdie or better matchup, but this week we're not going to have all birdie or better matches. But the first pick will be, it's going to be Emiliano Grillo over Mark Hubbard. I've been a big Emiliano Grillo fan for quite a long time at this point. But this year in particular, I've already had him as a pick in a couple of videos, had him as a couple of featured plays in my 8 under 8K article over at FTN Daily. So been high on Grillo so far this year, as well as the latter portions of late last year as well. So Grillo's kind of turned his game around pretty much over the last year or so, where he's really been improving on the putter. Obviously, in my opinion, he's always been a very, very good ball striker. So for him to go kind of take that next step on the greens, it's gone a long way for him. I do think this is going to be a very good season for Grillo, and I think that continues here. I think he has a pretty significant advantage on Hubbard. Like I mentioned in last week's video, it's really hard to find matchups where one player is just so much better than the other. Like PrizePicks is not asleep at the wheel, right? They're going to have, reasonable matchups, but this one is one where I do think Grillo fits the course better. I think he's just a better overall scorer. That doesn't necessarily mean he's a better overall golfer, but I do think he scores better overall than Mark Hubbard. I think he makes more birdies. As you can tell by his birdie or better numbers, he's 7th in this field in birdies or better, while Mark Hubbard is 24th in birdie or better. So more production on the greens and creating these birdies for Emiliano Grillo than Mark Hubbard. But a big thing for me is the driving distance. I think distance is going to be very important here. I think giving yourself a strong advantage off the tee is going to be very prominent so far, since what we've seen at this course in years past. We didn't see it 2 years ago, but we saw it last year and also back in 2020. But I think distance is going to be key. Hubbard kind of falls behind a little bit. He's in the bottom half of ball strikers off the tee with distance in this field. He's actually 75th in this field. There's only about 85 people in this field, so he's fairly down the list in terms of driving distance. Grillo's 19th in that metric, and like I mentioned, he's been pretty good around the greens as well. I should say not necessarily around the greens. His chipping has not been up to par, which I do think could hurt him, and that is potentially a spot where Hubbard has a slight advantage, but still not an area where Hubbard is elite by any means. Overall, ball striking, Grillo's better. Putting as of late, Grillo's been much better. And like I mentioned, that distance, which I think is going to be very important, he has been better. So first pick, Emiliano Grillo over Mark Hubbard there in the birdie or better matchup play. Second pick, going to go to another one of my favorite golfers here. Another guy that I've been kind of riding and dying with over the past couple years. And it's been, again, a fairly successful trip with Corey Connors here. So we're going to take Corey Connors over 3.5 birdies. Now, I don't have necessarily the greatest feel on how this course is going to play scoring wise, but the last 2 years where we've seen this event played at this course, we've seen some pretty good scores. Hideki won here last year with a score of 15 under, so nothing crazy where we're talking minus 24 or anything like that. But 2 years ago, I should say 2 tournaments ago at this particular course, Tiger Woods won with a score of 19 under. I believe that was in 2019. So when you're talking scoring, I don't think it's necessarily going to be a very easy course to score at, but I don't think it's going to be difficult by any means. I think good players are going to have their way around the course, and I think Corey Conners is going to be one of those guys. But the biggest thing that I am taking away from Alex Blickel's course fit article is that putting is fairly it's fairly volatile in terms of trying to predict it. And I think those kinds of tournaments are great for players like Emiliano Grillo, who, even though he's improved with the putter, still inconsistent at times. Corey Conners has struggled with the putter at times, although he too has improved over his year-long basis. But Corey Conners is one of the best players in this field off the tee. He's not necessarily the longest, but he's not short either. But he is one of the best off the tee in this entire field, no matter what baseline number you want to look at, whether it's the 2-year data. He's third in strokes gained off the tee in his last 25 rounds. He's third, and in the last 6 months he is sixth in off the tee strokes gained. So tee to green, he's one of the best players in this field. So I think he's going to have plenty of opportunities to make birdies, and in that round 1, over 3.5 is where we're going to take here. Now, one thing you do want to keep in mind, it's a par 70, so you're not going to see as many par 5s, so not necessarily as many easy birdies. So the past couple weeks when we saw par 72s, there's 4 holes that are par 5s that these players are naturally going to have a better chance at birdieing or better. Not going to have that same sort of advantage here in this particular prop, but again, that's why you see lower numbers as well. 3.5 compared to a lot of the baseline numbers were 5.5 last week. So Corey Conners over 3.5 birdies or better in that first round. Pick number 2 is also going to be over 3.5 birdies or better, and that's going to be Keegan Bradley. Now, Keegan Bradley also sort of fits the mold that Corey Conners is in, right? They're very similar players, actually. Very, very good ball strikers, struggle with the putter at times. Now, the one key difference between Conners and Bradley is Bradley's a little bit longer off the tee, but he's not necessarily as good on approach as Corey Conners is. So you got kind of a little bit of a back and forth between these two here. But Keegan Bradley over the last 2 years has been very good on approach, so he's dealing with a little bit of a slump right now, but still his off the tee play has been phenomenal over, again, any sort of baseline timeline that you want to look at, whether it's 2-year, last 25 rounds, or last 6 months. So really like Bradley's ball striking, and in a spot where you could potentially say that putting skills aren't going to matter as much. Maybe they're easier greens, or maybe they're just tougher to predict based on the volatility of them. Per Alex Blickel's course fit model, which you can find every single week over at FTN Daily, I think that could really play into the hands of guys like Keegan Bradley and Corey Conners. So those are the 3 picks for this week. To recap, we have Emiliano Grillo over Mark Hubbard in the birdie or better matchup in round 1. Then we have round 1 picks, Corey Conners over 3.5 birdies, and Keegan Bradley also over 3.5 birdies. So that's going to do it for us. Again, if you are a new user at PrizePicks, head over there, use that code FTN, you'll get yourself a 100% match up to $100. And again, let me know, who are you picking to win this week, and who are some of your favorite PrizePicks plays of the week for this week's ZOZO tournament. We'll see you guys next week, and as always, good luck, everybody.